Alrighty, my friends, welcome back to another segment of videos for the hybrid portion of your oceanography class. Um, so I, again, just want to apologize if these are coming out a bit later than they normally do. Things kind of just got in the way. Technology has not been helpful for me in the past few days, so hopefully those issues will be resolved. But just some of our normal announcements before we really jump into things. One, please start chipping away at your SmartBook reading assignments. I really cannot stress that enough. We've finished Unit 3 now, so chapters 7 through 10 are complete. We're going to complete chapter 11 today, and then start into chapter 12. So please make sure that you are chipping away at those. You will not be very happy with me or yourself if you leave that to the last minute, right? Because it'll be May next week. So with it being May next week and my hard set deadline being May 21st, which I know seems like a far away, like, oh, 3 weeks away, that's not that bad. Well, all of a sudden it'll be May 20th and it's like, holy bananas, what's going on? So just keep that in mind. Two, just wanted to chat for just a moment about your final, because it's going to be, maybe you're trying to make plans for finals week and like kind of manage your time and figure out, where you should dedicate your time and how much. So the final will be available all week for finals week. It will be the same format on Connect as it is, on your other exams have been. So no changes there. Fill in the blank, multiple choice, move around the interactive ones kind of thing. And if you've noticed that you've had problems with the interactive portion or the interactive questions, I think I got a little bit of feedback that some of those are a little bit difficult. Just try to maybe use a device that is a little bit better. Like if you have been using a tablet, maybe consider asking someone for a laptop or borrow any from the school. Might be a little bit easier for you to kind of maneuver those questions. And then of course it will finish out with short answer questions, which I will be grading as things go along. Speaking of grading, I am chipping away at your personal letters. They are fantastic looking so far. They do take me a bit of time to grade. It's like 15 to 20 minutes per letter, which there's about 35 of you. So if you do the math on that, it's quite a bit. So if we're going conservative and say 20 minutes times 35, that's 700 minutes. That's roughly 30 hours of work for me to do that. So it's taken me some time, but I am getting things chipped away. Last little announcement is that the lab portion of this class is going to Fort Funston this week on Friday to go to the beach. It's like our little field trip of the semester, and I'm just extending the invitation to you. If you want to join us, you are more than welcome to. We'll be meeting at the Fort Funston parking lot at noon, hanging out up on the bluffs and observing wave action as it comes towards the shore for about 10-15 minutes, and then we'll take a short, about half-mile walk down to the Fort Funston beach. There's a lovely trail that goes down there. So if you want to come, you're more than welcome to, but you certainly do not have to. Just extending the invitation if you have time or so choose. Anyways, so with these sections of videos, we're going to continue to look at the adaptations to salinity, or to the environment for creatures to be able to live there, and then we'll jump into different types of planktonic organisms. So continuing on with biology. Whoop, whoop. Okay, so we've already talked about light and temperature and how those factors can influence an organism's ability to live there, right? Can light penetrate through? Can organisms make light? Or the color of their body is an evolutionary thing to light. And temperature, can you exist in warm water? Can you exist in cold water? Can you exist in a large range or a small range? That kind of thing. So we're going to focus on these last, we're going to focus on 3 through 6 today in terms of adaptation, starting with salinity. So there's basically like 3 main ways that organisms can adapt to salinity. The first is extraction. The second is diffusion, and almost like 2A instead of 3 is osmosis, because osmosis is really just a type of diffusion in that sort of sense. So the first, and I'm going to talk about each of these in detail. So the first is extraction. So some animals have to create a protective layer around them to protect them from the salt. So some creatures can extract silica and calcium carbonate in order to construct hard parts of their bodies in order to kind of give them some sort of protective barrier between their body and the salt, which is what these images are trying to show. We got a couple of shells here on the left and a couple of it looks like little silicon molecules, almost like diatoms here in a little bit as well. The next bit of adaptation is that of diffusion. So the big thing to keep in mind here is that all of things in nature go from high concentrations to low concentrations. Everything goes from high to low. Temperature, energy, mass, everything goes from high to low concentrations. So with diffusion, it's this idea that the nutrients and waste passes through a semi-permeable membrane from regions of high concentration to low concentration. So in this bottom right schematic, we can see that there's more waste within this sort of cell here. So the waste is moving out, and then the nutrients are on the outside of the cell and they are trying to move in. So the really interesting thing is that the membrane has particular properties, basically. So it can let some things out but not let some things in, and it can let some things in while not letting some things out. It depends on the size and type of molecule that is there. So in terms of salt processes and organisms within the oceans, we have a special type of diffusion which we call osmosis. So that's where water passes through the semi-permeable membrane from areas of high concentration of water to low concentrations of water. So regions of low salinity to high salinity until there is this isotonic where everything is equal, right? So in the top part, we have more salt particles on the right side, less on the left. And so water then goes from through the semi-permeable membrane into where there is the higher salt content. And when we consider these different types of adaptations to salinity, we kind of have basically like three categories of organism in terms of, how much of this osmosis is going on between the water and the creature. And so the first example is isotonic. So that means that the salinity of organisms is equal to the salinity of water. Examples of that would be like a worm or a mussel or an octopus. The way that I remember that one is like the squishy creatures, right? The ones that you can like squish, squish. So salt in, salt out, same. That would be like isotonic, right? Then hypertonic means that the salinity of organisms is greater than the salinity of the water. Examples of that would be a freshwater fish. Or even if like you were to jump into a chlorinated pool, like you would have more salt in your body than would be in the pool. And then, or also, some hypertonic examples could be like a carp or a sunfish, freshwater fish that you would see in like a catfish, things like that. Whereas hypotonic is the opposite. So the salinity of the organisms is less than that of the salinity of water. So various examples of that would be saltwater fish. So like barracuda, sharks and skates and rays, and tuna, like those type of saltwater seawater fish. And there's really interesting differences between the looks of these fish as well. So we have this is a marine fish, and where we have it drinks seawater and the salt is excreted by the gills, and there's low urine production by the kidneys, and there is overall water loss, osmotic water loss. And then there's and then there's where freshwater fish, where the fish does not drink any water, and the salt is absorbed by the cells, which is an osmotic water gain. And then there's also high urine production. So there's even really interesting differences between the looks of these two creatures, right? Like in the schematic, like the marine fish has its mouth open, indicating that it's drinking seawater, whereas the freshwater fish has its mouth closed, implying that it does not drink seawater, which is really kind of fascinating. It's just to help you remember. What's really fascinating is there are actually some organisms out there that will transition between being freshwater and saltwater fish. One in particular is very common around here. So salmon are anadromous, which means that they spawn and their juvenile stages are in freshwater, and then they kind of go down the rivers and return to the ocean as mature adults. And then before they die, before they naturally die, they will go back up the rivers in which they came and spawn there, and the whole circle of life will occur. There's been some issues with the salmon season here in California because, obviously things are kind of going down in not really a great way. The drought for the last several years has weakened our river system, so there's been less salmon going in and out. So they put a halt on the season this year. And then in the opposite sense, we have American and European eels that are catadromous, which means that they spawn and their juvenile stages are in the open ocean, and then they return to the rivers and estuaries as adults. So basically opposite. Start in the ocean, go back to the freshwater as adults. So they spend a lot of their juvenile stages as plankton, actually, and they kind of float around the surface currents just to see, which one's what's gonna happen there. So, not sure what's happening with my video right now, so hopefully this all recorded properly. If not, sweet. So when we return, we will talk about some of the last parts of adaptations and start into plankton. So thank you very much for watching.